reporting for the American Newsroom on the 9th of August, 1941. I am here on the USS Augusta off the coast of Newfoundland with breaking news of a secret conference between President Roosevelt and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill.
The Atlantic Charter was drafted at the Atlantic Conference, codenamed Riviera, by British Prime Minister Winston Churchill and U.S. President Franklin D. Roosevelt. It was issued as a joint declaration on August 14, 1941. Churchill and Roosevelt began communicating in 1939. This was their first of 11 wartime meetings in person. Both men traveled in secret. Churchill and Roosevelt met on August 9th and 10th, 1941 aboard the USS Augusta in Placentia Bay, Newfoundland, to discuss their respective wartime aims for the Second World War and to outline a post-war international system. The meeting had been called in response to the geopolitical situation in Europe by mid-1941. Although Great Britain had been spared from a German invasion in the fall of 1940, and with the passage of the U.S. Lend-Lease Act in March 1941, it was assured U.S. material support. But by the end of May, German forces had inflicted humiliating defeats upon the British, Greek, and Yugoslav forces in the Balkans, and were threatening to overrun Egypt and close off the Suez Canal, thereby restricting British access to its possessions in India. When the Germans invaded the Soviet Union on June 22, 1941, few policymakers in Washington or London believed that the Soviets would be able to resist the Nazi onslaught for more than 6 weeks. While the British government focused its efforts on dealing with the Germans in Europe, they were also concerned that Japan might take advantage of the situation to seize British, French, and Dutch territories in Southeast Asia. The Atlantic Charter was not a treaty between two powers, nor was it a final and formal expression of peace aims. It was only an affirmation, as the document declared, of certain common principles in the national policies of their respective countries on which they based their hopes for a better future for the world. The Charter stated the ideal goals of the war: disavow territorial expansion, no territorial changes made against the wishes of the people, restoration of self-government to those deprived of it, free access to raw materials, reduction of trade restrictions, post-war creation of a global organization to secure better economic and social conditions for all, freedom from fear and want, freedom of the seas, and abandonment of the use of force, as well as a disarmament of aggressor nations. The Charter was quickly and widely endorsed by the Allied nations and leading organizations at the subsequent meeting of the Inter-Allied Council in London on September 24, 1941. The governments in exile of Belgium, Czechoslovakia, Greece, Luxembourg, the Netherlands, Norway, Poland, and Yugoslavia, as well as the Soviet Union, unanimously adopted adherence to the common principles of policy set forth in the Atlantic Charter. On January 1, 1942, a larger group of nations, who adhered to the principles of the Atlantic Charter, issued a joint declaration by United Nations stressing their solidarity in the defense against Hitlerism.